Hey guys, what a great weekend it was for the Big 12 Conference. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports Weekly, part of heartlandcollegesports.com, your independent Big 12 digital media outlet, and we appreciate you joining us. If you're on the podcast right now, please leave a rating, review, subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate that subscription. You leave us a rating and review, by the way, and we'll get you a free Heartland College Sports koozie. We'll do that for you. All you have to do is leave that rating and review and then send me an email to Pete Mundo, M-U-N-D-O, at heartlandcollegesports.com of the rating and review, and we get the koozie right in the mail for you. All right, let's recap a great Week 11 of Big 12 football, and once again, as we always do, we'll recap these games in order from start to finish. Let's start off with Baylor and TCU. This game was, first off, fantastic. Triple overtime, and just everything that is great about college football. And let's confirm this as well. The college football overtime rule is so far superior to the NFL rule, it's not even debatable. NFL fans may argue the purity of the NFL overtime is better. It's not. It's not. College has the best overtime system of any major sport, and no one is ever going to convince me otherwise. But in this game, before we get to overtime and everything that happened there, both defenses, TCU and Baylor, of course, Baylor winning the game in triple overtime, were strong, were hard, solid, but also both offenses were suspect at times. I mean, Baylor would have 5 in the box, and TCU would keep throwing the ball. And Baylor, I don't think they ran Charlie Brewer enough early in the game, including down on the goal line in the second half when they had to settle for what I believe was the second of 3 field goals in the final 30 minutes. You know, they're trying to fit it in a tight slot on an out route to Denzel Mims when he's got Jeff Gladney on him, who's going to be an NFL cornerback. I don't understand and did not understand at the time some of the play calls there for the Baylor offense. But both teams had its offensive struggles. Then we got to overtime, and man, oh man, the fireworks were completely lit up. And also, let's give credit to John Mayers, Baylor's kicker. The guy missed a 32-yard field goal in the first half, and then he goes 3 for 3 in the second half, including the 51-yarder to tie things up. I mean, his body's a wonderland, no doubt about that. All right, overtime. Let's get to it. The first overtime, I thought Baylor had it in the bag. Everybody thought Baylor had it in the bag until the officials overturned that incredible catch by Tavaliance Hunt, the TCU wide receiver who went up in the left corner of the end zone, came down with the ball, right arm inbounds, and he forced a second overtime. That is the greatest catch by a Big 12 player this season. Don't at me. It's not close. It was that good of a grab, especially when you consider how big of a moment it was for this TCU team in that first overtime. Second overtime, TCU scores first, then the pressure's on Baylor. Denzel Mims' catch over the middle to tie things up. By the way, that catch by Denzel Mims, that was not as easy as it looked. It was not as clean as it looked. That was a tough grab there by Mims. And he made it look easy. I mean, he's clearly going to be playing at the next level. He had himself a great afternoon. And then we get to the third overtime. The Baylor touchdown, followed up by the Max Duggan callback touchdown run that was overturned. Was it the right call? Yes, it was the right call. His foot was out of bounds. You can see it from 3 different angles. His foot was out of bounds. It's too bad. It would have been great to see us go to a potential fourth overtime, or I guess it wouldn't have gone to a fourth. Oh, it could have, because if TCU did not get the 2-point conversion, we would have gone to a fourth overtime. But he was out of bounds. There's no other way to put it. He was out of bounds. I'm sorry, TCU fans, but he was. And I think if you're TCU, you come out of this game and you say to yourself, you know what? I mean, Max Duggan in this game did not play all that well. 14 of 32 with 3 interceptions, 66 rushing yards. But Gary Patterson said it very well after the game. He said the foundation of the player, referring to Max Duggan, is solid. And he's right about that. This guy, you're going to work through the growing pains this year. But think about it. You almost upset a top 15 team when your true freshman quarterback had more incompletions than completions and threw 3 interceptions. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can spin yesterday's game as a major positive for the TCU Horned Frogs, and that's what this fan base should be doing right now. I know it's going to be another, 6-6-ish season for TCU, and you never want to have 2 of those in a row. But this is one of those years where TCU is going to lose a lot of close games, and it's going to benefit them next year. I mean, that's what this is going to be about, and that's how TCU fans have to really take this game and realize what it's going to do for the future of this program led by Max Duggan. For Baylor, we have got, and I know I've said it every week, but we have to make sure we are giving this Baylor defense its props, because without the Baylor defense playing as well as it has, this team's probably 5-3. I hate to admit it, but the offensive line has been shaky at times. Same thing with the running game. And Brewer, I mean, I love Charlie Brewer's hustle. I love his fight. He runs like an SOB. But, man, Charlie, sometimes you got to throw the ball away. It's hard to hate on him because you love his style, but this guy sometimes has to realize you've got to throw the ball away. I'm sorry. He's got to learn to do that better. But for the 8th time in 9 games this season, the Baylor defense did not allow a touchdown in the first quarter. They've only allowed 41 first-half points this season. And that's an unbelievable number. Think about that. 9 games, 41 points. Talking about 6-7 points a game. I mean, that is fantastic. Now, on top of that, every game this year, Baylor has held opponents to 30 points or less, and in 8 of the 9 games, they've held their opponents to 21 points or less in regulation. They had 3 more sacks yesterday to lead the Big 12 in that department with 29. That's what I thought was going to be the difference maker in this game. I thought that Baylor would be able to get to the TCU backfield, get to Max Duggan. Why? Because Oklahoma State did it, and Oklahoma State does not have half of the front 7 that Baylor does. Terrell Bernard, by the way, replacing Clay Johnston, may be the smoothest transition to replacing an all Big 12, all-conference caliber player that I've seen on the defensive side of the ball in this conference in a long time. Terrell Bernard has stepped in, and he has made Baylor fans say, Clay who? That's how good he has been, filling in for Clay Johnston, who was having arguably the best season of any linebacker in the Big 12. But he's been that good. He was outstanding again yesterday, all over the field, and a big reason that Baylor's defense has stayed this good without Clay Johnston is because of Terrell Bernard. Baylor had 3 interceptions yesterday. They have 10 on the season now. They had 10 in Matt Rule's first 2 years combined on the job in Waco. This Phil Snow is doing with this unit is beyond impressive. He deserves an enormous amount of props for it, and he is the reason that this Baylor team is still undefeated and gearing up for a huge game against Oklahoma next weekend at home, which, by the way, in that game, College Game Day is going to be in Waco next weekend for the first time in 4 years, in case you missed that. So props to the Baylor Bears. Props to Waco for getting College Game Day next weekend. Kudos to them for staying undefeated. By the way, we're on Facebook Live and Periscope as well, so please do leave any comments or questions. Throw them on Facebook Live or Periscope. I'll get to them as soon as I can. Let's go to game number 2 of the day. I guess by far least intriguing and least competitive game of the day was Texas Tech beating up West Virginia. I mean, my goodness gracious, not even close. Tech scored touchdowns on the first 5 drives of the game, and it was basically over. And let's take a chance here to defend Matt Wells, all right? This was the most complete game of the season for Texas Tech. And, yes, they were coming off a bye. And, yes, it's against a not very good West Virginia team. But Matt Wells has been getting crushed by portions, and not all, not the majority, but portions of the Texas Tech fan base. And it's got to stop, okay? I understand you long for the days of Mike Leach. I understand you're thinking, hey, it's been a decade since we've really been in the picture for Big 12 championships and things like that. But Matt Wells deserves more than 7-8 games without his starting quarterback. I'm sorry, he deserves more. Something that has to be noted as well is when you have a new head coach, and Matt Rule made this point a couple weeks ago. Now, when you're a new head coach, you have an early signing period. That makes it so difficult for you to recruit. a decent class that first year. And one of the things that Matt Rule said when he was talking about getting hired at Baylor, he said, thank goodness we do not have an early signing period, did not have an early signing period right when I was hired, because that was the last year in the old system. He goes, having that signing period when we had it allowed me to build a class coming from Temple and get a lot of guys late. Matt Wells could not do that last year because of an early signing period. And Matt Wells, you really can't judge him. And I know Tech fans don't want to hear this, but you cannot judge the job that Matt Wells has done probably until about this point in the 2021 season. I hate to break it to you, but that's just true. It's going to be very difficult to judge him before that. So Texas Tech gets a big win yesterday over West Virginia. Jet Duffy looked comfortable. 24-34, he looked really good, all without TJ Vasher as well. The TCU defense got pressure in the West Virginia backfield. They held the Mountaineers to under 3 yards per carry, which everyone's doing this year. But considering how poorly Tech's defense has played at times in recent weeks, that's a good thing. Most impressive for Tech, the offensive line played well. 0 sacks by West Virginia. And this was a Mountaineers team that had made a living in the backfield. The Stills brothers have been racking up sacks all season long. They did not do it on Saturday against the Red Raiders. That's a good thing. So good for Tech. Get in the win column and try to put together a couple of wins here at the end of the season. Now, West Virginia, here's the question. Dagey at quarterback in place of Austin Kendall. He looked pretty good. And he got a huge ovation from the Mountaineer faithful as he entered the game late in the third quarter, played 3 drives, replacing Austin Kendall at quarterback. Those 3 drives for Dagey resulted in 119 yards, 1 touchdown, 17 passes. And yes, the offense did look more fluid. It did look more in sync with Dagey over Kendall because this offense has been terrible. There's no other way to put it. And it's not all Austin Kendall's fault. It's not. But over the past 4 games, here's a little stat for you for West Virginia. Over the past 4 games, the Mountaineers had failed to score 20 points in any one game, and the defense and special teams have scored 25% of the total points over the past month. I mean, that's pathetic, especially in the Big 12. You can't have that. But Austin Kendall, he had 2 big underthrows yesterday to Sam James, where James got behind the defender, Kendall did not lead him, and did not look good. He underthrew him both times. And while I understand that Jarrett Dagey was going up against mostly backups in a prevent defense, I understand that. He still looks significantly better. And here's the deal. I don't know what Neil Brown's going to do. I assume he'll make an announcement this week at some point who's going to be starting next weekend's game. If you give the start to Jarrett Dagey, if you're Neil Brown, you cannot go drive with him, drive with Kendall, because then you have no quarterback. Just ask Bill Snyder about that last year, going between Skylar Thompson and Alex Delton. I don't believe in the 2-quarterback system. I don't think it works. All right? You have to give a guy like Jarrett Dagey time to get into a groove if you're going to give him the start over these next 3 games, which I'm fine doing because West Virginia is at the point where, yes, they could win their next 3 games and be bowl eligible and be 6-6. It's not likely they could do it. They could also win 2 of 3, go 5-7, and potentially be bowl eligible. But you've got Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU. At this point, you do what's best in the Kansas State game. Whichever quarterback you think gives you the best chance, you don't go tit for tat. If you lose that Kansas State game and you're like, you know what, we're playing for 2020, then give Jarrett Dagey a shot and see what he's got. Let him prepare like the starter for the final 2 games and see what the kid's got. Because that is the first step in a big rebuild for Neil Brown. It's the first step, figuring out if you've got your quarterback on this roster. I know that Austin Kendall is not the only one to blame, but you cannot tell me with any confidence that even if the rest of this team gets better, Austin Kendall's a guy that you're confident could help you compete for a Big 12 title in 2020. I do not buy it. I just don't. So that's going to be the question now for the Mountaineers moving forward. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports Weekly, part of heartlandcollegesports.com, recapping Week 11 in the Big 12 Conference. And we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. When you use the promo code BIG12, that's Big12, you get a 100% sign-up bonus. They do a fantastic job. Highly recommend it. That is mybookie.ag. promo code BIG12. BIG12 for a 100% sign-up bonus. So we've been using them. The picks, by the way, 4-0 this past week. Don't kid yourself. Heck of a week for us here. I had Tech minus the 2.5. I had Baylor minus the 2. I had K-State plus 7, and I had Iowa State plus 14. So a good weekend for the picks. All right, let's now dive into the final 2 games of the weekend here in the Big 12. Kansas State and Texas. Kansas State, 2 quick scores. The atmosphere was dead at Darrell K. Royal Stadium down there in Austin. And this game could have spiraled the Texas season out of control. And we would have been talking about what's up with Tom Herman. Is this program regressing? But now they're still in the Big 12 championship game mix. I mean, they're in the conversation. They've got to go to Iowa State next weekend. But this loss would have been crushing for Texas because suddenly you go from Big 12 championship game discussion to can they reach a bowl game? I mean, that seriously would have been the discussion for the Texas faithful. But now you're still in the Big 12 mix. Yes, you need some help. But I believe this team in this game, down 14-0 early against K-State, would have folded under previous regimes. So I will give Tom Herman and his coaching staff credit for not letting this team roll over, for getting the crowd back into the game as well, because the crowd was dead. I mean, it was dead in that first quarter on Saturday in Austin. They got back in. Texas wins the game on the ground, 214 rushing yards to 51 for K-State. Keontae Ingram, 16 carries, 139 yards and 2 scores, and they held the Wildcats to 2.0 yards per carry. That was great. Now, Texas has got to clean up. They've got to clean up the penalties. The penalties were not good for the Longhorns over the weekend. 9 penalties, 85 yards. But all in all, Texas out of a bye week, getting back on track, getting healthy in the secondary. Caden Stearns, B.J. Foster, some nice wrinkles on that side of the ball. And then you have a really underrated group of skill guys in Ingram, Colin Johnson, and Devin Duvernay. I know we talk a lot about what OU's got, and we're talking a lot about what Iowa State's got, and Oklahoma State, guys like Chuba Hubbard, Tylan Wallace, who I know is banged up, but we talk about those guys all the time. It's rare that Texas is not talked about enough, but at least these individual players, their skill position players, pretty darn impressive. And they had good games yesterday, all 3 of them, Johnson, Duvernay, and Ingram. For Kansas State, they are proving to be a tough out. Now, here's the deal. I don't think that any Kansas State fan is talking about moral victories because now you can't make the Big 12 championship game. But for a team that was picked to finish 9th, in the conference this year, to be playing a game on November 9th and having a chance to still make a Big 12 championship game, how do you not say that this season has been a massive success no matter what? How do you not say that? I mean, Coach Kleiman, what he is doing with these guys is fantastic. By the way, Chris Kleiman, underratedly jacked, I must say. Underratedly jacked. He had the Army style. It wasn't a hoodie. It was like, one of those long sleeve shirts on yesterday, camouflage, and underratedly jacked for not just Big 12 coaches but college football coaches. And I was having a great conversation with Mitch Holtis, voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, late last week, and because I work in Kansas City, I do radio in Kansas City, and he was telling me that a lot of what Chris Kleiman is doing is things the Kansas City Chiefs do in terms of how they utilize their offensive line, how they're shifting guys in and out. And I was fascinated by that. Coach Kleiman is doing things that mostly only NFL guys are doing, and it's obviously working beautifully for him. So it's still a great story for this Kansas State team. We'll see if they're still ranked in the top 25. My hope is that Texas and Kansas State are still in that 21 to 25 range comes to college football playoff rankings this weekend. But let's see how that works. The only critique I have right now for Kansas State in this game, and this loss to Texas over the weekend, was that they went away from the pass in the second quarter. Not extensively, but enough. And when your top 2 running backs in Gilbert and Brown are out, and you're not getting much going on the ground, and you've torn up Texas through the air, by the way, with Skylar Thompson, who had a career passing day in yards thrown for. So when that is kind of the formula that's working, and you have your 2 top running backs out, I thought they relied a little bit too much on the run. I know they want to do that in general as a team, but don't screw up what you've got working. And I thought Kansas State did that, unfortunately, in this game in that second quarter on Saturday. On Facebook Live, do you think K-State still has a shot to play in the Big 12 championship? No. Sorry, I do not, Ramesh. I don't. I'm sorry. But, K-State is now has 3 Big 12 losses, so it's not going to happen. But they'll get to a good bowl game. And for a team that was picked to finish 9th in the conference, you got to be happy about that. I think you have to be very happy right now. Cody said Jordan Brown did play. Did he play? I thought he was pretty banged up, though, as I recall. He was pretty banged up, and I don't think he got a lot of carries. But Gilbert was definitely out of that game. So if I may be wrong about Brown playing, I apologize about that if I had that wrong. But that running game, it wasn't the same. It just was not the same for Kansas State on Saturday. So I thought that they could have got that going a little bit more. Just keep going to the pass and allow that to kind of work you through that game on Saturday. So Kansas State losing 27-24. Let's take a look here at what happened on Saturday. Hang on one second. We've got Burns had 8 carries. Trotter had 4. And who else do we have here? Just trying to pull up the numbers real quick. And my computer froze on me. I apologize for that, guys. Brown had 7 carries for 4 yards. Yeah, not a good day for him. Not a good day for him. No other way to put it. No other way to put it. Let's talk about the last game of the day here for the Big 12. It was Oklahoma and Iowa State. Let's get this out of the way off the top. Yes, there was pass interference. There was pass interference in this game on that 2-point conversion by Iowa State. No doubt about it. Parnell Motley basically tackled Petway before the ball was anywhere close to him, and he was not making a play on the ball. OU got away with that. And guess what? If you're an OU fan, that's why you don't complain about the Kansas State onside kick when it doesn't go your way. The calls over a season typically even out, okay? They do. You got away with one. And if you want to say the refs should let him play, I'm typically for that, but that was a very obvious pass interference call that should have been called, all right? I understand that OU fans are going to say, well, there's other times Iowa State could have won the game. Yes, that's true. And there's other times you could have beaten Kansas State, okay? So let's take a step back and realize that typically the calls work themselves out over a season's worth, over 12 games, and you can't blame your failures in a game on a single call and then not allow the same thing in return the following week, which is what some of you fans are trying to do. It was pass interference, okay? But you won the game, and you're still in the hunt for the college football playoff. Here's the biggest problem right now for OU. And by the way, I don't say that as a knock on OU fans. Let me make one thing clear as a Big 12 fan. I want to see every team win every game. Obviously, they can't in conference play. But I want to see all these Big 12 teams do as well as possible. It's good for OU. It's good for Heartland College Sports that OU's in the discussion for the college football playoff, and that you've got what could be a top 10 game this weekend between Baylor and Oklahoma. But I'm just calling it how it is, all right? That was pass interference. There's no doubt about it. Jalen Hurts, though, is not improving as a quarterback. I mean, this guy's got the best skill position players in the Big 12, and he's not improving as a quarterback. I'm sorry, he's not. And that is a major problem for this team if it wants to compete for a national championship. He's basically a running back who's got a good arm sometimes. That's what he is. And he has not improved at the quarterback position well enough here in recent weeks. He just has not done it. Questionable decisions yesterday. He should have been picked off 3 times in the first half. I mean, one should have been a pick 6 by Greg Eisworth. He's just not improving. And he's got the best skill position players around him and arguably the best offensive line in the Big 12. Oh, and the best offensive mind in Lincoln Riley in the league. But nice to see Kennedy Brooks getting the ball back, 15 carries for OU. But Jalen Hurts still led the team with 22 because he's a glorified running back. There are defensive growing pains. This team is missing John Michael Terry against the run especially. They've got a talented D, but it is young and it is thin. And in that second half, when the offense scored a total of 7 points, it did not help the defense. It did not help the defense at all in that game. So, and by the way, OU fans, you guys left the game early. You know, I mean, the stadium was maybe half full. half full at the end of that game. And I know it was a blowout at halftime, but OU fans, you're complaining about too many 11 a.m. kickoffs, and then you get a primetime game and you leave at halftime? I mean, what's that all about? Come on, man. I don't want to give you too hard a time, but I got to rib you a little bit here because that wasn't acceptable. I mean, don't become a spoiled fan base, all right? Don't do that. Love this team. Love this program. And you're up 21 at halftime, but, if you're a college football fan and a Big 12 fan, you know that Iowa State is an explosive team. And I kept waiting for Iowa State to make a push. Did I think it would ever get that close? No. But I thought they'd make a push because this team has fight to it. This Iowa State team has a lot of grit to it, and they showed that in a big way on Saturday, coming from 21 points down. So Iowa State, I mentioned the 3 missed interceptions in that first half. They outscore OU 27-7 in the second half. They've got 4 losses by 11 points. Penalties hurt them. They had 11 for 85 yards. That's very Matt Campbell coach team-esque, if that's the best way to put it. So there were other chances they had in this game. There's no doubt about it, but 4 losses by 11 points. I mean, 2 by a point, 1 by 2 points, 1 by 7 points. That is as brutal as it gets. This team is 5-4. That's not what any Iowa State fan was expecting at this point in the year. But when you've got 4 losses by 11 points, I mean, it's tough. It's a tough one to swallow. It's a very, very tough one to swallow. Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports Weekly, part of heartlandcollegesports.com. We will be recapping the college football playoff rankings in the middle of this week, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast there. We have a lot that we are going to be diving into throughout the week as well. So be sure to go subscribe to our podcast. We put the midweek shows only on podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And please do leave a rating and review as well on the podcast. Helps us tremendously. I'll send you a free koozie if you do that. Just email me a screenshot a screenshot of the rating and review to Pete Mundo, MUNDO, at heartlandcollegesports.com. Thanks so much, guys. And also, mybookie.ag, promo code BIG12. That's Big 12 for a 100% sign-up bonus. Our picks, 4-0 this past weekend, 6-1 the last couple of weeks. So get on board now, mybookie.ag, promo code BIG12 for a 100% sign-up bonus. I'm Pete Mundo. We're heartlandcollegesports.com. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.